Hey Pokemon Masters, Toby here, and I hope you're enjoying Legends Arceus as much as I am. I have been taking a nice break and only doing a little bit of work because I didn't want to leave you without anything at all. So I will be back on the 20th of February. This is just one video to tide you over, and it's one video with 125 secrets, hidden references, Easter eggs, things that I just think are particularly cool, including Pokedex entries from Pokemon Legends Arceus. It is a very spoiler-heavy video, so if you don't want spoilers, don't watch, and thank you to my friends Ruinmaniac Files, who's editing this video, and Hybrid Hero, who helped me locate many of these Easter eggs and secrets, for doing this, because I couldn't have done this without extra help. So I will see you all on the 20th of February, and enjoy Legends Arceus, and enjoy this video. Starting off strong, we have number 1, Time Travel. At the very beginning of the game, you are the player character from Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, or Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, being sent back in time by Arceus itself. Here's the thing though, Arceus actually says that if you seek out all Pokemon, thou shalt find me again. And this might be a very straightforward piece of dialogue in which Arceus is saying that if you find all of the Pokemon, great, you will speak once more. Or it could be a reference to the fact that this game is set after the events of Diamond and Pearl from the player's point of view, and it's possible that the player may have encountered Arceus already in the Hall of Origin event that hopefully we will get for Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl a little bit later on this year. Meeting our first new character, we have Professor Leventon, and all of the characters in this game appear to be ancestors of pre-existing characters, and it seems to be the case that Leventon is the ancestor of both Hop and Leon of the Galar region. We know Hop's ancestry dates back to the old Sinnoh region because in his room we can find a Krogunk statue, a statue that we can also find in Pastoria City in Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Now if you're anything like me, you might recognize the shirt that the player character is wearing, and that's because if you're playing as Lucas, your shirt is from the Kalos region, and if you're playing as Dawn, it's from the Galar region. Professor Leventon mentions the fact that Pokemon have the incredible ability to shrink down to a minuscule size, suggesting that their ability to shrink is not because of the Pokeball, but actually something inherent in Pokemon, which is an insight into how Pokeballs work, because we haven't had a lot of that. Professor Leventon tells us that the Pokeball is a pretty recent invention, and actually Jubilife Village is only said to be 2 years old, implying that the invention of the Pokeball allowing humans and Pokemon to coexist more safely has allowed for the development of this entire city. Professor Leventon also mentions the Pokedex, saying that we in the field call this a Pokedex, suggesting that there is a field of scientific research and other professors out there with other Pokedexes, perhaps a nod to future Legends games. Number 7, obviously the name Jubilife Village is a reference to Jubilife City, and there is the same musical themes playing throughout. I'm not going to mention every musical theme that repeats itself throughout this game, otherwise this would be a twice as long list. But yes, it's implied that Jubilife Village one day becomes Jubilife City, but that's actually not so because of number 8. The first thing Leventon tells you when you're walking down the street is that this is Canala Avenue, as in Canalave, and based on this village's position on the map, it would actually make more sense that this village would one day become Canalave City. And perhaps Jubilife City just expands a little bit further into the Obsidian Fieldlands. If you look up as you enter the gate, you will see a giant ceramic bell, which looks a lot like the bell Pokemon of ancient Sinnoh, Bronzong. I also recognize another Pokemon in the architecture, and that is the pipes on the Galaxy Gang's building. They look an awful lot like where Leventon is from, the Galarian Wheezing. This is interesting because it just implies that Wheezing and Galarian Wheezing and Coughing existed in olden times, and they're not a modern Pokemon created by some kind of Team Rocket science. Speaking of the Galaxy Gang headquarters, of course, the Galaxy Gang is a giant reference to Team Galactic. Their logo is the same, and it would seem that this organization will one day move on to become the evil organization that Cyrus rules. In the garden nearby, we can meet a character called Colza, who is clearly the ancestor of the plant-loving Gardenia, gym leader of Eterna City. Another NPC will tell us that human weapons are no match against the fangs and claws of Pokemon. Now, this is very specific wording here, because one, it implies that humans do use or did use weapons to fight Pokemon, but there's actually a myth in Sinnoh called the Veilstone myth that refers to a human going around with a sword smiting Pokemon, until one day a Pokemon speaks to them and says that with fangs and claws they will exact their toll. On a much calmer note, number 14, there is an NPC who mentions that the Galaxy Gang don't seem to be doing much. What are they doing in there? Making a potato dex? And this may well be a reference to Galar's curry dex. In the corner of the village, we can find a little shrine with a particular shape to it, and of course this is a shrine to the mighty Type Null. No, okay, obviously not, it's Arceus. We meet a few more townspeople like Choi, who is the ancestor of Charon of Team Galactic, implying that somewhere along the lines his ancestry he joins the Galaxy Gang. We can also meet Anthe, the Clothier, who is the ancestor of Darok. Darok's an interesting character and quite obscure because while they are a frontier brain, they're actually battling on behalf of Caitlyn, who would later become a Unnovan Elite Four member. Also in Jubilife Village is the Pokemon Pastures, where you deposit your Pokemon. This might be a reference to how you use the daycare in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, which is the Salacion Ranch. However, it might also be a reference to My Pokemon Ranch on Wii, which was a Pokemon box system. Number 19, before heading into the Galactic Gang headquarters, we also meet Benny, who is yet again an ancestor of a modern character, but you don't find out until much later in the game when he reveals that he has a ninja-like strength. This immediately makes us think of Koga in his pose, but actually if you look at his hair and notice that one of his aces is Gallade, you might realize that he's actually also the ancestor to Wally, meaning Koga and Wally, and of course Janine, Koga's daughter, are all related. Number 20, this one is a fun one. So of course you're playing as either Lucas or Dawn in this game, but you also have an ancestor counterpart, Akari or Ray, and if you play as one, then your ancestor doesn't exist. Let me explain. If you choose to play as Lucas, then Lucas's ancestor Ray doesn't exist. But if you choose to play as Dawn, then Dawn's ancestor Akari also doesn't exist. This might imply that because at the end of the game you close the space-time rift, that your player character actually stays back in time and becomes their own ancestor. Yeah, let's not think too hard on that. Number 21, we meet Captain Silene, who is of course the ancestor of Cyrus, unless Cyrus also did some time traveling shenanigans that we still don't know about. But what we do know about from the plot is that Silene is a hero and is on the goodies team. This role reversal from Cyrus is actually a nod and a hint to the twists and turns that come with some of the other characters. Now, when we first see the space-time rift open up, we see these RGB lights coming out, and this is actually a reference to when Cyrus opened up time and space at the end of Diamond and Pearl, and we see those same RGB lights. Perhaps the space-time rift distortion is being caused somehow by Cyrus's actions in Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, Brilliant Diamonds, or Shining Pearl. If you head around the Galactic Gang headquarters, you can also find your way to the medical core, and there you will see the origin of all Nurse Joys. But she's not just related to Nurse Joy, she's also related to the companion character from Diamond and Pearl, Miri, because they have the exact same hair. Also, a small and very missable detail is number 24. If you have a look at all the coat racks around the building, they're made out of Stantler's antlers, or certainly designed to at least be the same shape. Let's hope that that's the case and that they're not actually Stantler's antlers. Number 25, we also meet Volo, who is the ancestor of Cynthia, and given what we know about him at the end of the game, he's clearly just testing your strength here. The first main area you'll explore is the Obsidian Fieldlands, and it's interesting that it's called that given that there aren't that many volcanoes in the Sinnoh region, but we find out later in the game that Lake Verity actually used to be a volcano, meaning this whole area would have been covered in volcanic glass, making it the Obsidian Fieldlands. You'll then have to report to Commander Kamado, who is of course Professor Rowan's ancestor. There's another little tidbit here that I find really interesting. If you have a look at his desk, you'll see a picture of him with what looks like perhaps a wife, a partner. I wonder what the story is there. You also learn how to craft Pokeballs from apricorns, which is a reference to Kurt, the apricorn Pokeball maker from the Johto region. He is the last person who remembers how to make Pokeballs in this way before they're mass produced. And of course, this provides for a whole variety of new Pokeballs, just like we get in this game. Now, based on everything we know about the map, this makes complete sense. If you look at the northwestern side of the map, you see the Florio Gardens, which of course will be the inspiration for Falroma Town in the future. In fact, if you've done the little shaman event that comes with the game, you'll realize that that allows all of these flowers to bloom, and this is a desolate part of some hill, which is an event that's actually referenced in Diamond and Pearl as being the home of Falroma Town. So yes, this area becomes Falroma Town. We'll eventually go over the entire map throughout this, but I want to go through this in the order that the game happens. So next we meet Diamond Clan's Mai, who is the ancestor to Marley, again one of the companion characters from Diamond and Pearl. Mai is the guardian of Weirdeer, which is described to be like the ride Pokemon of Alola by Professor Laventon, implying that ride Pokemon actually existed in this time. I wonder what they used instead of the Pokeride Pager. Perhaps another magical flute? Next up we meet the clan leaders Adamant and Iridia, and these are the only two characters in the whole game that appear to be completely original characters, and their ancestry is very hard to place. However, their outfits do hint at one thing, that they will ultimately be the holders of the orbs for Dialga and Palkia, with a little pearl on Iridia's outfit and a little diamond on Adaman's. An ancestry I did recognize though is Sanquia, who is in the Galactic building. She seems to be the ancestor to Karen of the Elite Four of Johto. There is also the Orb-Burrow Tunnel, which is very clearly the Orb-Burrow Mine. Now this is right down next to where Kleavor is, and that makes sense because number 35, Kleavor's tools were said to be used, according to the Pokemon website, by the old people of Hisui, and in the Orb-Burrow City in Diamond and Pearl, we actually see in the museum a whole bunch of stone tools. Kleavor's warden is Leon, who is the ancestor to Clay, and you can finally look to playing the Celestia flute, which of course is the thing that becomes one day the Azure flute, and this can actually be seen in the modern day spear pillar in Diamond and Pearl. Now, while the entire game is a reference to The Legend of Zelda, clearly taking inspiration from many of the tropes, the Drifloon balloon race in particular reminds me of riding around the ranch on Epona's back, shooting at things with arrows from horseback. Clearly, the way that the music changes seems to take inspiration from elements of Zelda just like this. Number 39, lots of the names of the various NPCs are puns, like Baggin, who will expand the size of your bag. He helps you get stuff in your bag. There's also the lady who gives you the Spirtomb quest, and her name is Vessa, as in vessel, as in being possessed by Spirtomb. This might explain the actions of the Karate Man in Diamond and Pearl, who says, "Hush, don't say anything, takes this," and gives you an odd keystone. Arezu is of course the ancestor to Commander Mars. Ginter is the ancestor to Volkner, and we also meet Thule of the Ginkgo Guild. I've realized there's actually several named characters in the game who take on this appearance, so this might genuinely just be a random NPC. They do look kind of like Bianca or Greta though. At this point in the story, number 43, you actually have access to a special shiny Pokemon that is guaranteed in every run, and that is a shiny Ponyta. Now, I believe the reason that they chose Ponyta for this game is a reference to the fact that this is a game about special legendary horses. We see this with Dialga and Palkia's new forms, as well as Arceus itself being very equine, and in the last DLC we also just got Calyrex and Spectrier and Glastrier. So horses all around for this generation. Also, the new shiny Rapidash is a little bit more purple than usual. Entering the Crimson Mirelands, we immediately realize that we are exploring the marshlands of Sinnoh. This is the areas that will become Pastoria City, the marshy routes, the Safari Zone, and perhaps also Mr. Backlot's mansion is somewhere around here. We also find ourselves visiting the Solaceon ruins that even predate Legends Arceus, which is absolutely fascinating. These ruins were built in joint by the people of Johto and the Sinnoh region, or rather the Hisui region. Number 46, we meet a group of bandits called the Misfortunes, a female-only group consisting of Charm, who is the ancestor to both Agatha and Bertha. Their likeness has been described by other characters in the Pokemon universe, but this is kind of finally tying them together, with both of her aces being a Gengar for Agatha and a Rhydon for Bertha. Coin is the ancestor to Commander Saturn, and Clover is the ancestor to Candice, the Ice Gym leader of Sinnoh. In the Diamond Camp, we also see someone worried about a group of Psyduck who won't move, who have a headache. This is a reference to in Diamond and Pearl, the group of Psyduck you have to move with the secret potion. Number 50, in the Shrouded Ruins, we find a giant odd keystone. Now, at first I wanted to think that this would one day become the Hallowed Tower, but that actually doesn't make sense based on its positioning. In fact, based on its positioning just below Lake Valor, there are no ruins that are out that way, so this is an entirely new area. But of course, the giant odd keystone is a reference to Spirtomb and the keystones in general. And speaking of map positionings, when you get out to the Colboat coastland, the Veilstone Cape is not where it should be, and we know this based on its relationship to the Sendback Spring, which is another Easter egg, of course referencing the Turnback Cave and Send-Off Spring from Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. But the Veilstone City is above that in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, meaning the Veilstone Cape is simply where the town got its name. We also know this because in Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, we actually learn how Veilstone was made by a bunch of meteorites crashing down and making way for this city. So clearly this is where they got the name Veilstone from. It is at this point in the game we also have access to the Turnback Cave and Send-Off Spring that look almost identical to their original appearance in Diamond and Pearl. Number 53 and 54, we also meet Paulina and Izcan. These are two characters that are incredibly hard to place. I think Paulina may be an ancestor to May, given that they have the exact same headwear, but that's really about all I've got. Iscan, I believe to be an ancestor of Nessa, but this is only because on the official art, Iscan has this pose with his finger to his mouth, and I seem to remember something from Sword and Shield that had Nessa doing the same pose, but now I'm not quite sure I'm remembering that right. So if you have recommendations for who either of these characters might be related to, please let me know in the comments, but I think these are my closest best guesses. Now, I've mentioned comparing the Hisuian region to the Sinnoh region's map a few times, but let's quickfire a few locations. We have Fire Spit Island, which is of course Stark Mountain, and now that we have access to surfing on Bastia Legion, we can visit Romanus Island in the Obsidian Fieldlands. This is the area that will become the Romanus Park, and what the Romanus Park is named after. That makes sense because it is to the right-hand side of the Sandgem Flats, which will be Sandgem Town in the future, and north of that we obviously see Lake Verity, as I mentioned earlier. But to the far right of this, to the far east, we see the Moss Rock, where you can evolve an Eevee into a Leafeon, and lots of people would assume that that means that this area will one day become Eterna Forest, and the music is even a little bit in tandem with that, but I don't think that can be the case, because this Moss Rock is located further south than Romanus Island, which makes no sense, and in relation to Romanus Island, the Obero Mine is exactly where it should be, meaning Eterna Forest must be elsewhere. We now have Lake Valor accessible to us, which given its location in relation to the marshlands makes complete sense. Number 60, we meet Ingo, and Ingo is like you, having fallen through the space-time rift. Ingo is not an ancestor to anyone. Ingo is from the games Black and White and Black and White 2, where he runs the battle subway. While you're in town, you can go to the Clothier, and there's actually a whole bunch of little clothing Easter eggs and references, but the main one I'm going to focus on is the classic Galactic set, which is obviously a reference to Team Galactic's uniform. How this outfit got there, though, I have no idea. Maybe it's just meant to be a little Easter egg and nothing more. Number 62, though, and I actually didn't realize when exactly this popped up during the game because it's not there at the beginning, but you can also find the Sevi Kitchen, a location that is only described on the map as being the Sevi Kitchen, referencing of course the Sevi Islands of the Kanto region, but ultimately this building is inaccessible. How strange. Number 63, heading to the Cornet Highlands, we see Melly, who is the ancestor to Avery from the Sword and Shield DLC. He's using a bunch of poison Pokemon, just like his Galarian Slowbro Ace in the Sword and Shield DLC. And when you enter the Cornet Highlands, Leventon mentions that there is a strong magnetism about Mount Cornet, and that may well be a reference to how Pokemon evolve via magnetism in these areas, like Magneton into Magnezone. Before getting up to Mount Cornet, though, you have to go through the Wayward Cave, another location from Diamond and Pearl. It's interesting to note that your path to the Wayward Cave actually dips down, which would make sense as being the area that the cycling road would have been built on top of. While in the cave, Ingo opens up about his past, mentioning that he had a partner Pokemon that was very fiery. He's referring to his Chandelure, one of his aces. He also mentions a man that looked like him, and this is his twin brother, Emmett. I wonder what Emmett's doing now. At the very end of the Wayward Cave, he says that this is the cave's terminus. Now, whether this is a reference to Kalos's Terminus Cave is very debatable, but I do find it interesting given that the Terminus Cave has a bunch of disused train tracks in it, and this is Ingo, the leader of the battle subway, and all of his speak is train speak. Number 69, I just have to jump a little bit further in the plot here because I messed up my ordering, but we learned that in the Pearl Clan tents that there are a thing called snow goggles that the Pearl Clan uses to keep snow out of their eyes, though we don't see any Pearl Clan member wearing a pair of these apart from Iridia, who doesn't live in the snowy area, but she's just got them with her. The final thing to note about Ingo is that Ingo remembers HMs, hidden moves from the future, which of course they had in the Unova games. Number 71, I mentioned earlier that the Eterna Forest was probably elsewhere from the Obsidian Fieldlands, and if we were to head north from there, we would end up in the Cornet Highlands on the far western edge. And on the far western edge of the Cornet Highlands, there's this strange cemetery where we can find Mistravus, which is a Pokemon that you can find in Eterna Forest. And you can also find Rotom there, and of course Rotom is known for existing in that area. Based on the relation of everything else, this to me makes sense to be the location of the one day Eterna Forest and the Old Chateau. That's because number 72, if you walk east from here, you will find a number of statues of Dialga Palkia and a broken statue of Giratina. This is the area that will one day become Eterna City, north of the Wayward Cave and the cycling road, and just sort of next to Mount Cornet. The statues even resemble the final statue of the combined Dialga and Palkia that we see in Diamond and Pearl. Number 73, after battling the Noble Electrode, we actually have Adamant create Sinnoh myth. Adamant directly quotes something that appears as the Sinnoh myth in Diamond and Pearl in the Canalive library. He's making it right here. Number 74, we enter the icy north of Sinnoh and we meet Gartic, who is clearly the ancestor to Crash Awake, but perhaps also Wulfric of the Kalos region, and I love the idea that those two are in fact related. We also see Sabi, who a lot of people are pointing out is the ancestor to Cheryl. Look at her green hair from the Sinnoh region, but I also think she might be an ancestor to Hapu of the Alola region, again suggesting that these characters are related. We also have access to Lake Acuity, which is a fascinating landmark, and it's right where it should be, next to number 77, the Snow Point Temple, a special area that in Diamond and Pearl you can encounter Regigigas. This means that the area next to this, where the Pearl clan has a settlement, will one day become Snow Point City. Number 79, the Snow Point Temple actually contains statues of a number of indistinct golems, but if you count their eyes, these are golems representing Registeel, Ice, and Rock, which is why they're holding those emblems, and it just makes me wonder, why did they introduce Regieleki and Regidrago Dark this generation if they weren't going to do anything with them? Right, before I move on to the later stages of the game, again, big spoiler warning, I'm just going to take a moment to cover a few more characters' ancestries who you may have noticed I've missed. Number 80, there's Teo Hua, who is downstairs in the Galaxy Gang. I cannot, for the life of me, work out who this person is related to. The best guess I had based on the way that he stands is that it's Faber of the Alola region, but I'm honestly not sure. There's also Zizu, who thanks to the help of my friend Hybrid Hero, pointed out that this is the ancestor to Flint and Buck. Flint and Buck are related in the Sinnoh games, and Buck has this thing where he swings his arm, and Zizu does exactly that. There is also finally Kalaba, who is one of the earlier wardens. She's an old lady who's 99 years old, and this is the other character that I'm just stuck on. I've heard some people say that perhaps she's related to Mina. Personally, I don't see it. Perhaps also she could be related to Ramos of the Kalos region, the grass gym leader, but again, I'm just not quite convinced. Usually the connections are more obvious than this, so if you know who this is the ancestor of, please let me know, and sorry to kind of cut the list one short. Right, on with the big spoilery stuff. Number 83, we see the Ancient Campsite. This is of course the location of Celestic Town, one of the oldest settlements in all of the Sinnoh region. There we meet Miss Kogita, or Kojita, I think it's Kojita, who is an ancestor as well to Cynthia, part of Cynthia's bloodline, just like Volo, although it's interesting that they never reference the fact that they're related, Kojita and Volo, which kind of suggests that maybe there's something else going on here. We'll have to find out perhaps in some future DLC. This will make sense though that perhaps it was Miss Kojita who created the murals in what one day would become Celestic Town at the base of the mountain, referring to the lake spirits and creating the red chain, because of course that is what she sends you off to do. And while in the lakes, number 85, this is a classic Diamond and Pearl Easter egg as well, the circles of water on the floor reference the locations of the other lakes throughout Sinnoh. Now, number 86, I mentioned earlier that it turns out that Lake Verity was a volcano. We actually also learned that Lake Valor may have also been a volcano once, but its origins are debatable. The only one that's not referenced as being a volcano at some point is Lake Acuity up in the north. However, that weirdly is the one that should be a volcano, because there are legends in the anime that describe Regigigas protecting Snow Point City from an ancient volcano, though I suppose that may just be a reference to Fire Spit Mountain. This is because Snow Point City doesn't exist yet, it's just the Pearl Clan settlement. Now, number 87, the items that you obtain from Azelf, Uxie, and Mesprit are the Plume, Fang, and Claw, and once again we may have a reference to the Veilstone myth here. The Veilstone myth directly references a Pokemon speaking to a person who's been slaying Pokemon with a sword and says that if you keep doing it, we'll have to exact our toll with fangs and claws. Here we've got a fang and a claw, and Pokemon that are seen speaking directly to the minds of people before, as the myth says, disappearing to a place beyond seeing. Number 88, Commander Kamado begins his expedition up Mount Cornet and leaves Silene in charge. It is perhaps this power structure that allows for one day Silene's bloodline to inherit the Galaxy Gang, and thus how Cyrus gained control of Team Galactic in modern day. We also meet a Lucaria trainer named Rai, who is of course a reference to the, again, companion character from Diamond and Pearl, Riley. Number 90, moving away from the story a little bit, we have an actually really interesting view on the Pokemon timeline here, because it is mentioned, according to modern Pokedex entries, that Spirtomb was sealed away 500 years earlier. In this game, you pick up all the Spiritomb's lost spirits and tie them to an odd keystone, so perhaps this game is 500 years ago. However, I don't think so, because when you're given the quest, the person who gives you that quest, Vesta, says that hundreds of years ago, magic was used to seal this creature to the odd keystone. If she is referring to the 500 years ago date that the modern Pokedex references, then that means that this game has to be happening no later than 300 years before the modern Pokemon games. It can't be any later than that, because otherwise she wouldn't say hundreds of years ago Spirtomb was sealed, given that we know from modern day it's 500 years ago. I hope that makes sense. I'll try and make a timeline video at some point. Number 91, back to the story, we see that Commander Kamado's is the same as Wikstrom's of the Elite Four of Kalos, implying that they are from the exact same place. I'm actually going to circle back to that in a minute. Number 92, we see that the Primeval Grotto has fossils, just like in the Sinnoh Underground in BDSP, the giant Bastiodon fossil. It seems to be a nod to that. Also, while you're in the Primeval Grotto, take a look at all the nose pass. If you don't get too close to them, they will always turn and point north, which is a wonderful addition. Cool little Easter egg, reference to their Pokedex entry, how they always face north. Unless, of course, you're distracting them. Let them get back to pointing north. Number 94, underneath this piece of Sinnoh, this Primeval Grotto, we can also find the Primal Ore. This may be a reference to how in the Grand Sinnoh Underground in Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, especially at the center of the map where Celestic Town is, not too far away from this, there is a giant gemstone, but I don't know, maybe that's just a theory waiting to happen. Number 95, when under pressure, Commander Kamado's accent completely breaks, revealing a Galarian accent, and this is confirmed in the post-game when he mentions that the armor that he's wearing is a classic, traditional Galarian armor, suggesting that he is from the Galar region originally before coming over and creating the Galaxy Gang, and also that Wikstrom, who speaks in Old English, is also from the Galar region, so that theory is confirmed. The Origin Ball. Now, obviously they couldn't do the Master Ball in this game because the Master Ball was created in modern day by Selfco, but this Origin Ball does look familiar, and I think it is a clear reference to the origin of the Cherish Ball, the event item only Pokeball that allows you to, well, have event only Pokemon. Number 97, this Origin Ball is the only Pokeball in the whole game to shake 3 times, referencing all future Pokeballs going forward. Number 98, right at the end of the game, the player character looks back and reminisces over Spear Pillar, much like Professor Rowan did in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. Now, before I move on to the big post-game stuff, number 99, if you go into the tents of the Diamond and Pearl clans, you're going to see some pictures. One of a guy with red hair, one of a guy with blue hair, and one of a guy who looks a lot like Alder from Generation 5. It's thought that this might be the hero of myth that is later described, and that perhaps this is some kind of reference to a future Legends Unova game. But as for the red-haired and blue-haired fellow, are these ancestors to Archie and Maxie? Hybrid Hero seems to think so. I'm not as sure at the moment, but let me know what you think in the comments. And now we're going to move on to the post-game. Number 100. In the post-game, you can catch the mythical Pokemon Manaphys, and of course its predecessor, Phione. There we learn that Manaphys is described as the Sea Prince, which is a reference to the Manaphy movie where it is described as the Prince of the Sea. Number 101, though, in order to access this Manaphy, you need to go to an area that was once called the EC Hollow. This is a reference to Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl that introduced the Seas Legend, a book in the Canalive library that refers to the Seas Hollow, and in order to access this area you need an oversized Quillfish, an Overquill, a Mantike, and a Buizel in your party to enter the EC Hollow. What's interesting to note here is I think a lot of people are going to think the book in the Canalive library, the Sea Legend, is actually talking about the player character finding Manaphy, but that's not true because Iscan mentions that the book already exists in the time of Legends Arceus. Moving into the post-game, you battle a Vespiquen who is a very angry alpha Vespiquen protecting one of the Arceus plates, and at first that seems like a random choice for a boss, given that the rest of the Pokemon in this quest are legendary Pokemon. What if I told you it's not random at all, but is instead a reference to the Gigantamax Vespiquen from the Isle of Armor DLC? 103, we learned from Kojita in the post-game that before the people of Hisui were around the Diamond Clan, the Pearl Clan, it was her people who were the people of Sinnoh, who created the Temple of Sinnoh, hence where the Sinnoh region will one day get its name. And this happened a millennium or two ago, which is a really interesting date in the Pokemon world, because we know that 3 millenniums ago there was the AZ Ultimate Weapon and the Darkest Day, but there were still many events that were happening around that time, such as the construction of the Abyssal Ruins and the Dragon Spiral Tower. Number 104 and 105, we see the Adamant Crystal and the Lustrous Globe. These two items, of course, will one day become the Adamant Orb and Lustrous Orb, much smaller versions of themselves, implying that this item can get smaller and perhaps referencing the Pearlescent and Prism orbs that can be found in the Sinnoh Underground in Diamond and Pearl. Clearly, these orbs can go from being very, very powerful to very, very weak. After you battle Commander Kamado at Prelude Beach, he is the one who suggests that perhaps the region should in fact be called the Sinnoh region, thus giving the region its name for the future. And Volo does the exact same at Spear Pillar, saying that the pillars are like spears piercing their heavens, and hence where the name Spear Pillar now comes from. Now, big twist at the end, 108, Volo turns out to be the villain at the end of everything, and we learn that Volo's plan is exactly the same as Cyrus, to use a legendary Pokemon, in this case Arceus, to destroy the universe and create a new universe. I mentioned at the beginning how the RGB lights that were coming out of the space-time rift were a reference to the RGB lights coming out of the rift that Cyrus created. Is it possible that Cyrus's intentions somehow ended up in Volo? We just don't know. We don't know, Lo. Number 109, Volo's team is exactly the same as Cynthia's, apart from her Milotic, which has been replaced with an Arcanine. Number 110, the Celestia Flute becomes the Azure Flute, the very same as the event-only item from Diamond and Pearl version, which allows you to access the Hall of Origin. And speaking of the Hall of Origin, number 111, if you seek out all Pokemon, you will be able to access an area via way of a kind of mystical glass staircase, which takes you to this space platform, presumably the Hall of Origin, and inside that you can see a sort of circle of creation. And on the center of the platform that you're looking at, number 112, there are these symbols, and these symbols might be recognizable from the Sinnoh Ruins event from Heart Gold and Soul Silver, where if you take your Arceus, it can create a Giratina, Dialga, or Palkia. Perhaps this is the place where Arceus watches on high and creates legendary Pokemon. Speaking of the Sinnoh Ruins, we see the architecture of a lot of the ruins, especially those in southern Sinnoh, or rather southern Hisui, are much like the same architecture that we see in the Sinnoh Ruins, and that makes sense because this area is the closest to the Johto region. We see in the Sinnoh Ruins event that Sinjoto, is between Johto and Sinnoh. So this area, it makes sense, and also as to why the Solaceon Ruins that feature the Unknown are here, because the Unknown are most closely tied to the ruins of Alph. And with those 112, I'm not quite done. I just wanted to go through some Pokedex entries that I thought were particularly interesting from the game. So let's get all the way up to 125, and I got a good one for the last one. Cricketot's Pokedex entry: when the trees take on new hues, more of these Pokemon appear. The tone they create by striking their antennae together resembles that of the marimba, an instrument of foreign lands. Now, the marimba in real life has its origins in Africa, and that's interesting because we haven't had a lot of Africa references in the Pokemon world at all. Most other continents have been referenced, but not Africa that much. So could this be referencing some kind of future Pokemon region? Number 115, not an Easter egg, just a cool one. According to Parasec's Pokedex entries, mushroom-lacking specimens of this Pokemon lie unmoving in the forest, lending credence to the hypothesis that the large mushroom is in control of Parasec's actions, which of course is a reference to the whole zombie Parasect. It's not the Pokemon, it's the mushroom theory. Number 116, Raichu's Pokedex entry: it can discharge bursts of electricity exceeding 100,000 volts. A single strike with that amount of power would incapacitate one of Copperaja of my homeland. Now, of course, this is being written from the point of view of Professor Leavington, whose homeland is the Galar region where Copperaja is from, but it's just interesting because in future Pokedex entries, future in terms of the timeline, it references an Indian elephant, which suggests that Copperaja is indeed from another Indian-based region. Number 117, Kadabra's Pokedex entry still reads that there are rumors that a child with mystical powers became a Kadabra. However, this remains unverified. I suspect that the spoon that Kadabra holds enhances its brainwaves. So this means that the theory about Kadabra being the result of an experiment in Silphco that I came up with last year, absolutely not the case. Number 118, Heracross. This Pokemon has an unparalleled horn. Heracross itself demonstrates tremendous power. It's capable of throwing several people trained in traditional arts of war at once, suggesting that people and Pokemon have physically fought. Warriors have fought Pokemon. Number 119, Gyarados. I suspect this Pokemon to be the true identity of a dragon written in ancient texts, which claimed that it raised an entire village with white-hot beams from its maw. Of course, its maw being its mouth, and the white-hot beams being Hyper Beam attacks, or perhaps Dragon Rage. This is a direct reference to Mahogany Town, the town at the northmost point of the Johto region, and just above it being the Lake of Rage, where Gyarados can be found. And it is said, according to the anime as well, that Gyarados once destroyed an entire village to create the Lake of Rage. And in fact, in the Space World demo for the Johto games, the Lake of Rage was an entire town. Number 120, Gardevoir. It will dedicate itself to defending a master it has come to adore. Its pure white dress is reminiscent of those worn by ladies of nobility. It is the dress of one who is willing to risk their life. Now, I find this super interesting because both Professor Leventon and Commander Kamado are from the Galar region. And right back at the beginning of this video, I mentioned that on his desk, there is a picture of a lady in a white dress. No, I'm not saying that that is a Gardevoir. I know the whole Sinnoh myth about marriage, but that is not what I'm suggesting here. What I am suggesting here is that Professor Leventon is directly referencing the tragic backstory of Commander Kamado, who had a wife who was once willing to risk their life. Perhaps this explains why Commander Kamado is just so stern and also fearful of Pokemon. Number 121, Pachirisu's Pokedex entry reads that it is related to the Pikachu line, and this is just interesting for the tree of evolution that I do here on the channel, because obviously it suggests that even though Pachirisu is a squirrel and Pikachu is a mouse, the fact is that all of these Pikachu clone Pokemon are clearly closely related. Number 122, Hisuian Electrode. The tissue on the surface of its body is curiously similar in composition to that of an apricorn. I did a video earlier this year explaining how Voltorb could be a grass type, and that perhaps it is the case that Voltorb was a plant-like life form before it became modern-day Voltorb related to Pokemon like Among Us, and this seems to verify that it is some kind of mutated apricorn that's come to life, or perhaps parasite on the apricorn. Number 123, Lucario, a most gallant looking creature. It emits energy waves and controls them with precision, using them to sense even faraway beings. I have given the name Aura to this power. Professor Leventon is responsible for the Aura Guardians being called the Aura Guard. You have Leventon to thank, Aura Guardian. Okay, just 2 more to go, but at this point, 36 minutes into this video, I wanted to say a huge thank you, because if you watched this far into this video and you're gonna watch all the way to the end, you're my secret audience. You make this channel happen. So a shout out to you. Let me know if you're still here and if there's any Easter eggs I've missed in the comments. Maybe they'll be the last 2 I cover, but I somehow doubt it. I'm sure I've missed a lot of things, and just thank you for the support and being part of this conversation, because I love talking about Easter eggs and secrets. So this next one is a Pokedex entry. It's less of an Easter egg. It's just something that I think is really, really cool, but I guess it ties into an Easter egg. And that is with my new relaunch channel mascot, Porygon. It has no discernible heartbeat, and it does not seem to draw breath, and yet it appears to function without issue. I cannot even begin to explain this utterly bizarre anomaly. Obviously, the way that Porygon can appear in the game is by way of the space-time distortions, and that explains anything coming from the future. Just like, I suppose this is an Easter egg, the link cable that allows you to evolve your trade-only Pokemon, because of course, in the original Red and Blue, they can only evolve via being traded over a physical link cable. And number 125. If you take your Ursaluna around the Hisui region and dig in the right spots, you are going to uncover ancient scrolls. These scrolls refer to the story of the ancient hero of Sinnoh from what would seem to be either a few hundred years ago or a millennia or 2 ago, when the people of Sinnoh settled. This is the same hero who had the 10 noble Pokemon who appear in the Shrine of Sinnoh. And actually, as of recording this video, I haven't yet discovered all of the scrolls, but I'm sure I'll do a video on that in the future. And there you have it. Did I miss anything big or obvious, or did you know some of the characters that I didn't? These are just the things in this video that I will be thinking about going forward into like the new year and the relaunch, and coming up with theories, and there's so much to think about and digest here. So I hope you're enjoying the game, and yes, I will see you again on the 20th of February with my channel relaunch, some new videos, a new look, and a new way of thinking. So hi, Pokemon Masters.
This is Ash Ketchum. You just watched a video by Birdkeeper Toby. That makes you a Pokemon Master.
Wow, a huge thank you to those of you who are supporting this channel, especially those of you on Patreon, and the big patrons of this month, JD Godlich, PokeBliss, Michael Hornschuch, and Jedruben. Thank you.